Good afternoon, members. My name is Marcus James. I manage Office and Administrative Services here at ACA, and we welcome you to this edition of the ACA Member Webinar Series. A couple of administrative notes before we begin. Attendees are in listen-only mode, and that means we would like you to please put your questions in the questions dialog box. We'll have a Q&A at the end, and your questions will be answered at that time. There's also a brief survey at the end, and we would appreciate your feedback there. And also, as we advance slides, you may experience a delay in your local view. It may be based on your bandwidth, but if we have an issue here, we will chime in and let you know. But do know that your slides will eventually catch up if that should happen to you. And now allow me to introduce today's presenters. We have Bob Kramer, a director with the ChemQuest Group who supports clients in the firm's operational and manufacturing efficiencies business pillar, has been instrumental in developing this webinar series. Bob joined ChemQuest in 2022 following a 40-year career in the polymer converting industry where he developed extensive global experience in operational management, driving enhanced business productivity and product development across diverse corporate environments. Co-presenting today is Pete Smith, a ChemQuest director who has extensive global leadership experience in operations and manufacturing management, including lean manufacturing, process development, logistics, and engineering in the chemical coatings and adhesives industries. Also joining us today as co-presenter is Carl Davenport, a ChemQuest director with over 35 years of global experience in plant and operations management, acquisitions, integration, and safety consulting with leading specialty chemical producers in North America, Europe, and Asia. Now I will hand this over to Bob to get us started.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. And hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, the last in our series on manufacturing and operational excellence. Today's topic is safety first, best practices in environmental health and safety. We're excited to be here today and hope that those of you who have attended one or more of our previous webinars have found the information insightful and hopefully in some ways applicable to your business. Next slide. So the ChemQuest team welcomes questions during the webinar and/or private feedback or questions sent directly to our email addresses. So don't hold back. If you have some, please reach out to us. We also can provide a link to each of the webinars as requested. Our contact information will be shared at the end of the presentation. And please, again, don't hesitate to reach out to anyone. We'd love to be in direct contact with you and share some more of our insights. Next slide. So for those of you less familiar with ChemQuest, I want to take a moment to introduce you to our firm. ChemQuest is a global consulting firm serving the chemicals, specialty chemicals markets. Our expertise lies in navigating the intersection of strategy, markets, operations, and technology through services offered in 4 pillars: business strategy and transformation, external technology development, operational and manufacturing efficiencies, and M&A advisory services, both buy and sell side. Our team is comprised of 130 plus people strong, and everyone has a minimum of 25 years of business experience, primarily from a technical or C-suite level role in their past. Our team members are former business owners, VPs of R&D, technology, marketing, operations, president, and the like. We've been in your shoes, and we understand the challenges you face on a daily basis. We love our industry, and that's why we choose to continue to support it at this point in our careers. All of our work is protected under NDA, with project and client confidentiality being of the utmost importance. So you don't have to worry about that when you deal with us. Any technical IP it developed belongs to the client. So with that, I'm going to get started, and I'll kick off the first few slides. Next slide. So I'm going to just take on a couple of slides, and I'm going to hand this off to both Carl and Pete. So just from a introduction standpoint, most of my background has been in what I'll call leadership roles, in VP of operations, general manager, as well as president of companies. And the one point that I want to make is it comes back to management responsibility is really, it's really about walking the talk. You hear that term a lot, but it's really important for leadership to jump in and be involved. And it's more than compliance, as the slide says. It's about really taking an active role in building trust amongst your employees so that they know that leadership is not just pushing a bottom line agenda, cost controls and flavor of the day type of thing and reporting on safety. They really need to embed themselves into the safety culture. And I can't emphasize that enough. If you're in a leadership role, I would really highly recommend that you take some of this advice and take an active role in it. And again, not compliance, but active role in building trust. But if you're not in a leadership role, I would say try to impact your leaders above you or around you so that they can kind of take that initiative on, because that is going to be the most important thing to get buy-in from the rest of the workforce. Next slide. So with that, safety needs to be prioritized accordingly. Safety leadership, again, what I was talking about, must include senior management commitment, and again, include meeting buy-in, commitment, and all those things that go along with being a leader, for both from the bottom of the shop floor all the way up to the boardroom. That leader needs to take an active, participation role and really feel for his employees. The other things: behavioral safety, employee engagement, safety management systems, process safety, OSHA requirements and standards. All these are kind of like the bread and butter of the safety processes that you need to have for a good safety leadership plan. So with that, I'm going to hand this off to Carl and Pete. Next slide, Marcus, and you guys take it away.
Okay. We're going to go through OSHA requirements, EPA, touch on many of the regulations that affect all of us in the coatings industry. So OSHA's mission, established in 1971, to ensure that employees work in a safe and healthful environment. So all of those standards were not written down, and it was mandated at that time that you have the OSHA rule book.
And OSHA's been involved now for 50 years or over 50 years, and it's morphed dramatically over that time. In the initial part, when it was first put out and first established, the idea was that it would establish very specific rules and very specific ways to attain compliance, and you had to do it exactly the way it was laid out. And those early standards really reflect that. What you find later, though, is they've changed to where they're going to more compliance. And this is what you need to do. You need to comply to. How you get there is a different story. And that's really where they are now, as they continue to evolve and drive compliance towards goals, rather than specifically telling you the steps you need to take to get there. Next slide, please.
Nick. Yeah. So on the OSHA requirements, all of you should know about your OSHA 300 log, or what your TRIR, total recordable incident rate. Now, based on what NAICS code that you are, those rates can vary. You should find or benchmark yourself against someone else in the industry. What are those rates? Am I meeting the rates? Best in class, world class, their target's going to be 0. You may not be at 0, but what should your rate be? How do you rate your performance? With a certain quantity of flammable material, you might fall under the PSM standard already. Many best in class will follow the PSM standards. There's 14 elements. We have all of that in the appendix for you to view once you see the presentation, but it's very comprehensive. All of those elements are critical to running your business. Next slide. So OSHA requirements, some of these are going to be under PSM if you follow or under that standard. but these are annual requirements that you must perform. Certain states might have additional requirements, but hazardous communication, bloodborne pathogens, lockout, tagout, electrical safety, all of these are annual required training for anyone that's affected within your organization. Next slide. Additional hot work, that's under PSM as well. Fall protection, chemical hygiene. You may have respirators for your laboratory or certain operators. There's 4 listed here, but there are specific requirements for toxic and hazardous substances, asbestos, lead, chromium, even chromium 6 can be grandfathered in some not automotive, but in military applications. So you need to look at all of those standards as well. Next slide.
And then the last one is the general duty clause. And that's a really very powerful tool. The general duty clause specifically requires an employer to provide a place of employment free of recognized hazards that may result in death or serious physical harm. So that's a very big catch-all phrase that they use and can be used to enforce things at the site. If they see something, if they do an inspection, they see something they don't like, that's a catch-all phrase that they, or a catch-all clause that they can use to cite companies under. And the 3 major things that the big 3 that companies have been cited under recently are Hazardous Communication Act, PPE, specifically respirators, and LATO. Those 3 are the big hitters in recent times as far as citations issued by OSHA. Next slide, please.
EPA, created by Richard Nixon in 1970 to protect human health and the environment. And Pete, I think there are similarities with the application of the EPA too.
Exactly. It's been, again, another one that's been in existence over 50 years. Again, started out with the idea of being very, very specific on the standards and how to comply, and has over the years become much more of a compliance-based approach to it, where what do you need to do, not how you should do it. And that certainly makes it better for industry. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so the EPA requirements, Clean Water Act, the NPDES, you may be under a stormwater prevention plan. The Clean Air Act, your facility or facilities might be under Title V, having an air operating permit. Based on the certain types of materials that you have, it could be ammonia, it could be silane, you might be under RMP. There are aspects of RMP like PSM, emergency response planning, all of those are covered. So you might be under the RMP plan. Air emissions reporting, it's currently changing. Actually, tomorrow is the last day to submit questions as it regards the new regulation, but it doesn't go into effect until 2027. So these are long-standing requirements, but they undergo change. So you have to pay attention to those and stay up to date with the requirements. Next slide. RCRA, your hazardous waste generator status. Are you a large quantity generator? What can you do maybe to avoid that status? Because there's a cost impact, not just the internal resources, but then the manifest and the cost of just being a large quantity generator.
That said, there are specific, there are exceptions to parts of that. So if you are a small quantity generator and something happens, you have an upset in your process, you have a large amount of hazardous waste that you need to deal with now, either through bad processing or whatever, you can apply for an exemption for a one-time ability to dispose of that large quantity without stepping into the large quantity generator category. But again, it's got to be a one-time thing. You can't do it every year.
That's right. And then TSCA, these OSHA regulations and EPA requirements, they flow into the laboratory. Your R&D technology, the raw materials that you're bringing in need to conform to TSCA. If you're doing synthesis within your organization, you may have to apply for a pre-manufacture notification until you get the TSCA approval. So you'll have going through that process, it could take some time, but then you'll have a low volume exemption to go ahead with your new product. Next slide.
Carl said, it can take some time. The fact is it can take multiple years for approval on a PMN.
Okay, EPCRA, Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act, your Form R, certain materials, I know facilities where I've been, butanol was one that we fell under, so you have to report those quantities, and your raw material consumption could change, so it's not a one-time thing, it could be over multiple years. Your site, or maybe you have heard of sites that have been under the Superfund. Then you have the FIFRA, which goes into the insecticide and fungicide. And one of the things that's also prevalent now with the changes is going to be noise. So what is the decibel level at the boundary of your property? What's your zoning? These kind of things can maybe prohibit you from a 24/7 operation if the noise has to be lower at night. And there are countless examples in Europe where these kind of noise regulations were applied. Next slide. ESG, or environmental social governance, the framework that helps stakeholders manage risks. These applications or activities have been around for a long time, since the 1980s. They're now new under the ESG framework, but they've evolved from historical movements. World-class, best-in-class companies have systems in place to address these types of issues. So the goal is to ensure that companies take into account not only their profits, and this has also been legislated. So you can't escape it. Next slide. So environmental, your company's overall environmental impact, that might involve greenhouse gas emissions. It could be your stewardship over natural resources. Very important. A lot of chemical coatings plants seem to be built next to rivers. I don't know if that's still the case, but it always used to be. The social impact, the human capital. What about the treatment of employees, employee engagement? We'll get into that in more depth later, but employee engagement is key to a good safety system. And then your community outreach. What are you doing for the community? And again, governance, this is going to fall under federal government mandates. So your company's conduct is going to be monitored. Next slide. So other agencies, Homeland Security, the CFATS acronym. If you have wetted nitrocellulose, or if you use aluminum powder in certain quantities, then you're going to be under Homeland Security. They basically want to make sure that your site is going to be safe. Everyone's impacted by the DOT, whether you're shipping by land, but you also might be shipping by air. And so there's going to be DOT requirements, IATA requirements, or by sea, and not to neglect the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, and then finally state and local regulations. An example there, handling of flammables and plastics versus metal containers, big differences in LA County versus Orange County. Voluntary programs. ISO 14001 is one of the older and more familiar programs, but what these do is they help your management team, your company, set company policy, and you set goals for environmental health and safety, and then you measure yourself against those goals. Responsible care, RC 14001, many companies, global companies, are responsible care. RC 14001 is the standard that has to be met within North America. OSHA has a newer system, ISO 45001, just went into effect. And again, these are voluntary systems, but it could be that your customer base is requiring you to be compliant with these systems. And then finally, VPP or STAR, the OSHA Voluntary Protection Program, has been very effective in the reduction of injuries for many companies. Next slide. A safe work environment makes for a sound business. As Bob said right at the start, safety is the first among equals. We want lower costs, we want high profitability, we want good quality. We want a EHS system that's going to be improving performance. So it's the right thing to do. We want injuries and accidents to be prevented. Some of those goals are, like we just said, with some of the systems, help with the engagement from the workforce, the CEO down to whoever would be even cleaning the facility. Some of you might be required to have a formal injury and illness prevention program, improvement in regulatory compliance, the social responsibility we touched on with ESG, and of course, reduction in workers' comp costs. So you do get cost savings. It's not only the right thing to do, but it can increase productivity across the overall business, just like a good quality system would do. Next slide.
So study after study shows that it not only possible, it is directly, there's a direct correlation between employee engagement and the reduction in injuries. And it's easy to say, well, let's engage them, let's bring them in meetings and things like that, but that's not really what engagement is. The engagement of employees with safety and environmental is through commitment of everyone. Management to operators. It is not management just showing up at the meeting or a management person standing in front or a safety person standing in front and talking about the meetings. It is about getting everyone involved, getting employees to present either at meetings or safety topics. There's extensive communication that needs to occur between everyone in the organization. And there needs to be feedback and recognition of thoughts and ideas, as well as recognition of hazards and ways to prevent the hazard. There's opportunities for growth and learning for everyone in it, because one person's ideas are not the solution to everything. And you need to consider the mental health situations. And when I talk about that, what I'm really saying is that there's, yes, everybody's under some stress, and you need to be cognizant of that. But you also got to be very, very cognizant and adept when there's change going about. If there's if you have a union site, if there's labor negotiations coming up, that creates an unsettling situation. If your company is sold and everyone is unsure what that's all going to mean, what happens is there's a huge distraction that occurs because everyone's worried about their job, about all kinds of other things, and don't really focus on what they're doing and how they can, how quickly an injury can occur. So it's very important to make sure that those kind of situations are always kept in mind and kept up front so that they can be addressed and dealt with, and focus people on the task at hand, which is going home safely without creating any kind of environmental issues, and then providing the living for their families. The other thing we strongly encourage, and world-class companies do this, is they have policies. They have a safety and environmental policy, and they're signed by the CEO or the president of the company. And what it does is it demonstrates their compliance. They state in each one of those policies about working for compliance and beyond compliance, about their commitment to their employees, their commitment to their neighborhoods, whatever. And those policies are a very powerful tool. It can come back. It is a situation where employees can see that and know that that commitment's there, and employees can say, look, this is the commitment you've made, and we need as a company to be responsible and responsive to that. Those policies should be posted at every site where employees, contractors, and visitors can see them, because they're basically an operating principle that the company agrees that they're going to commit to and perform against. Next slide, please. So like most things, you've got to pay attention to the key metrics. Safety environmental activities are like all metrics. They got to be measured. They've got to be data driven. They've got to include employee involvement and specific goals. And employee involvement isn't just saying, well, here's your goals and you work toward. Employees need to understand that they have a very important part of making those metrics, as well as meeting those metrics. There are several tools going to be utilized to gather this data that you're going to need. You can do job safety analysis, you can do safety committees, huddles, audits and inspections, what if drills, again, the other KPIs that you have in the organization, as well as the TRIR as part of your metrics and the goals and keys you're going to work towards. Next slide, please.
Behavioral-based safety, BBS. This could be embedded in your safety system, but it's another great tool for looking at the interaction between employees. We're going to go to a slide in a minute, not yet, but it is research done by Heinrich. And one of the theories that Heinrich had was that 20% of incidents are caused by unsafe conditions. 80% are caused by human behavior. So to focus on human behavior allows you to be more impactful in reducing the number of injuries. So again, the micro approach would be gather data. Pete just went through some of the tools that you can use to gather that data. You're going to develop corrective actions and communicate that, and then you're going to track the effectiveness of those corrective actions. Processes to address unsafe behavior, recognizing unsafe behavior, putting those processes into action, evaluate that data, and then develop plans to monitor and promote. So again, continuous improvement, just like you would have in a quality system. The macro approach to BBS is a permanent change in the culture and should be applied throughout the organizations. We talked about the necessity of employee engagement. This is a way to go about doing it. Next slide. So this is a portrayal of Heinrich's triangle. So baseline actions and conditions determine the probability of incidents and injuries. And as you see, the pyramid gets smaller at the top, serious injuries, minor injury, near miss, and then at the bottom are errors. But there are far more errors than there are anything else. Many of us, we spend most of our time, and we should, investigating injuries, even near misses or first aid cases, but there's fewer of them. So if we get better at looking at the errors, and statistically, if you take the errors to zero, then you don't go up the pyramid. The other thing to look at here is even if it is a near miss, it's already happened. So where you are on the pyramid is determined by probability or luck. Whereas if I have an error, then nothing happened. And as an example, an easy example, there's a four-way stop close to where I live. So if I start running that stop sign, maybe nothing happens, but if I continue to run that stop sign, which is a unsafe or risky behavior, then bad stuff's going to happen. So What about that compared to an unsafe condition? Well, if I'm at the stop, the four-way stop at night, and the lights on my car don't work, that's an unsafe condition. So I can still run the stop sign and nothing happens, but the odds that I'm going to go further up that triangle without my lights on, or if they don't work, and I keep running the sign. So the other aspect, when you're focused on errors, it could be easier to manage when there's been a serious injury or another injury. Depending on the, let's say the level of your safety culture, people may not want to report it. But if they're looking at errors and they're looking at things like they would with a quality system, then it's easier to capture them then. Next slide.
And so we talk about the 4 types of safety culture, and starting at the bottom is the forced type of culture. And it's basically where safety is enforced by rules and regulations, and there are threats and punishments associated should you not follow those. And it's that got you approach. It really doesn't, it makes employees fearful. Going back to what Carl said, it makes situations where they don't report things, or they may see something and not report it on one of their fellow employees, all because of the fear that there's going to be a threat, or I'm sorry, a punishment or termination associated with something, noticing an error, noticing something not being right. The next one is a protective, and safety has its policies and procedures, and every time something happens, they write it, we need to have a new procedure. We need to modify the old procedure. That really continues to put all the emphasis on management and on the safety person to develop these procedures. And what happens is again, I can write procedures all day if I don't have to live them. And so I develop something that I think makes sense to me. But if the employee who has to do the job every day, if it doesn't make sense to them, it is not going to really solve the problem. It develops some thought process on it. It develops some initiative, but it really is a more protective that the company's got to protect me. The involved is where there's some training for employees. You continue the training. You've got a supervisor, an area supervisor. Maybe the plant manager comes out, but they really are standing in front of a crowd, telling them what they believe, what they're looking for, and again, there may be some interaction, but there's a ceiling. There's really not a full engagement, and that's what we're working for, is the full engagement. And when we say full engagement, we're talking about training provided by all levels of the organization. You've got production people leading training programs with supervisor, or sharing with them with supervisors. You've got staff and management attending and participating in the meetings, not just giving a lecture. And it's important that in that situation that there's an interaction and engagement that continues to go back and forth all the time. That's an important part of an engaged workforce. Next slide, please. And I want to just touch on something, and this is something I've brought into a number of facilities and a number of organizations, and it's a weekly plant safety audit inspection. You say, well, that's okay, well, they do that and it's all good. But there's a difference in the way this one's done, and that it's, yes, you develop a site-specific checklist or an area-specific checklist, and you're looking for things like tripping hazards, and are the eye wash and showers, are they clear, are they clean? You're checking fire extinguishers to make sure they're in places, and general housekeeping, and also some space for other things that are going on. But the twist in this is that the audit is a 2-person audit. It's performed by 2 people. One, the production person, is in the lead, the person from that area. It is their responsibility to document what's going on in there, to lead through the audit, and to make sure it occurs in the time frame it's supposed to. The second person is a supervisor, an office worker, a salesman, executive, who performs the inspection with that production person or with a maintenance person. And as they do that inspection, they've got to come onto their shift. They've got to do it on their schedule. Yes, they try to negotiate or get to acceptable time frames, but if it's a second shift or a third shift employee who's due to do it this week, then that supervisor, salesman, manager needs to show up on that second or third shift and do that with the employee. There are a couple of things that happen there. One is it demonstrates the commitment by management to be involved and engaged and to work with the floor people, the production people. It also, as putting the production person in charge, gives them a responsibility and the ownership of their area. The third thing it does is that in those inspections, many times, what happens is as someone who's worked in a plant, you look at things and you become, well, this is just the way we do it. That valve is always situated in that spot. That brew is always sitting over there. What do you become? You become complacent with what you've typically seen, and by bringing an outside set of eyes, you start getting questions about that. So, as an example, if there's a valve and someone has to reach over a railing and out a bit to open or close a valve, the first, and I've seen this happen, is that the question comes up, well, why is that valve way over there? Why does it move closer? And the first answer usually is, well, that's the way it was installed. But because it was installed that way doesn't mean it has to stay that way. And so it begins to get people thinking about what's going on, and that outside set of eyes brings a very different perspective to what's going on in a department. So that conversation, with the questions, the interaction, the engagement, the involvement of both the production person and the manager or salesman or office person, really becomes very valuable. It drives an understanding between them. It drives a respect for each other as they go through their job and they go through this kind of audit. I get a little passionate about this one, so I talk a while, and I apologize. Next slide, please.
All good.
So our final thoughts, and that, safety is not top down. It is driven by management. It needs to be owned by management, but it's not safety needs to be driven by everyone in the organization. It is not the safety professional's responsibility alone to manage safety. That you can't have a situation where they say, well, we told our safety person and they're supposed to take care of it. Or, that's our safety person's responsibility to come up with an approach or a solution. It is a truly engaged, everyone is part of the program and everyone is part of the solution. As we said, management needs to support, but it needs to be owned by everyone. And as stated earlier, and we continue to say that EHS performance is as important as profit, production, QC, costs, any other metric that you're going on in your organization. And at the beginning of it, we said world-class companies realize EHS is not only about compliance. They realize it's also about their employees, their families, the neighbors, and the general public. It's about being a good citizen, a good neighbor, a good employer. Next slide. Just one other point. We ran through the other regulations real quick because there's just so much there. We couldn't do justice to going into any one of them and any great thing. And we gave you certainly an alphabet soup of what's going on of the letters. But all those regulations you need to be cognizant of and realize they can have impact or have impact on your organization, and therefore you need to make sure you understand them and research them. With that, are there any questions?
All right, it's Marcus. I'll go ahead and let the audience know that you can access that questions box. If you have any questions, we'll go ahead and start. What are some practical ways to balance heavy service demands and dramatic increases in production causing longer hours, overtime, and stress on employees while maintaining safety performance?
You want to start with that one? Or
Yeah.
Carl, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it depends on the severity of what's happening. Many of the facilities that I've run in warm months where you have seasonal variation, you have an extra break in the afternoon for the employees to get hydrated, stay hydrated. If it's an ongoing pressure that's going on for a longer length of time, then you need to look at staffing levels. Can you afford to get some temporary staff to help with some of the tasks? Is it possible to look at toll manufacturing long term? Do you have a partner or do you have a sister facility that might be able to take up the slack? If you're preaching, that safety has to be the top priority, but then everyone's working 40 hours of overtime per week, it's not sustainable, and you're going to be in that where people might be making poor choices, and they run the risk of injury. So I would use all of those techniques. There might be others.
Well, I think, and it's kind of a cliche kind of comment, but one of the companies I work for, the CEO made the comment that, we're not successful if we're shipping product out the door with an ambulance taking employees out the back. We've really got to make sure that we treat our employees with respect, that we provide them what they need, and we can't demand too much from them. We've got to, there's certainly a reasonableness to expect an increase or some additional commitment, but they got to always maintain that safety is the number one, no matter what they do, and that we've got to provide them adequate time to recover to be able to do their job well.
All right, let's go to the next one. My company is very cost conscious, and we are careful about how much and where we spend. How can I justify driving employee engagement in another program with senior management?
Who wants to take that one?
I'll take that one. First off, a lot of the things we talk about, getting employee engagement, is not there. There really is there's minimal cost to it. The financial impact of trying to get other people, of getting employees involved, actually, getting them more involved in their day-to-day job, getting them more and more engaged in their workplace, and that commitment, just like in a quality situation, pays dividends right away. It is not. It really. So you can, there are some places you can say there's, there's a tangible benefit, such as reduction in workman's comp costs or reduction in insurance costs, things like that. But there are also a ton of other benefits where people are doing their job well. They're thinking about what they do. They approach it with a mindset of doing it right the first time safely, and that has a huge benefit in the overall operation across the board.
Anything to add?
I'm sorry?
You said, Carl, anything to add to Pete's?
I think you, Pete, nailed it. My comments would be your return on investment. So if you're a facility that is having a lot of injuries, you have a lot of issues, then you need to look at that investment, that cost as a return on investment. You're going to reduce injuries, which is the right thing to do. Workers' comp. If it's an environmental issue, you're reducing the potentiality for a fine. So you'd need to look at it from that perspective. And it's hard because maybe it's not capital. If it's a capital investment, okay, I'm going to get back, I'll get payback in a year or two. But I think you can still put safety and environmental in that context. If I'm going to make an investment, then what's my expectation on the return?
All right, let's move to the next one. Why is BBS a higher priority than process safety or management systems? I struggle with this because my company invests in a BBS program, but does not have a solid foundation in EHS policies and procedures.
I'll take that one.
Okay.
The BBS, as we presented here, is a part of another system. So I look at behavioral safety systems as something that's internal. So your process safety management system might be the overall system, but within those 14 elements, if it's mechanical integrity or incident investigation, or one like management of change. So if that's integrated, BBS is integrated, it should be helping you, not another system to be deployed along with. So, getting the employee engagement on procedures could happen from a job safety analysis. So job safety analysis might involve looking at behavioral data, but it's the team that's there. They're looking at the safe way to make the job safe, but then you're also complying with management of change and process safety management directives. So it's a problem if it's another system along with RMP and process safety management, somehow find a way to integrate it.
I would think, and it's hard for me, from my background, to separate the H&S programs from BBS. From my approach to things, or my view, is that if you're looking at the behavioral-based approach by people, you've really got to be, considering health, safety, and environmental as part of that. So while you may not have the details of the policies or procedures, it really, the BBS should be leading to that situation where you need to develop those and support, because you're going to have you need standards for your BBS, and that's where they're going to come from.
All right, let's move to the next question. Currently, we track all the required OSHA accident data via the OSHA log, but we do not track near misses. Would you recommend we start doing so? If yes, how can we best implement this across the business?
I'll take a shot at that one, since I have some experience coming into facilities that did not have practice and processes and near misses. Really, we're in a reactive versus proactive way of, I'd say, managing their safety. So I would recommend installing a near miss process, because it's proactive and you're heading off accidents before they happen. Now, it's got to be done the right way. I think, Carl, you mentioned about or Pete, I'm not sure, but one of the slides we mentioned about the I gotcha kind of mentality in an operation. I think if the near miss process is somebody going around the facility and saying, aha, I see you didn't do this. Aha, I got you doing that was going to be an accident. That, to me, is not the way it's meant to be used. I mean, I hate to say it, but how many times in our career do we hear that infamous, boy, I wish we would have done something. I saw that one coming. Those are the kind of things that happen when you don't have near misses, and people were just being quiet, and they didn't, speak up about something that they knew or they saw happening, and the fact that they didn't have a near miss process couldn't prevent an accident if they would have been on top of it and spoke up. So yes, I would strongly recommend putting it in place, but again, emphasizing it's got to be done, in the right way. I don't know if you guys have any other insights you want to share about that, but that would be my view on it.
Well, I support what you're saying there, Bob. And in fact, in a lot of cases, I believe that the safety and tracking, like near misses or incidents or whatever, should be done along a similar line, like the ISO series, where you have a ISO 9000, or where you track, you log, you put information in relative to the near misses or incidents or even the errors that occur, and then you come up with solutions, and you track the effectiveness of those solutions. That's a key through all of this, is, and as we said earlier about setting metrics and tracking, is having a way to know what to record what injuries or near misses or errors have occurred, what solutions are developed to do that, are they implemented, and what's the time frame, and then are they effective? And it's that continuous improvement, which is the same thing you ought to apply to quality, to safety, to every part of your business.
I would only add near misses. A near miss is an incident. All incidents need to be investigated. The severity of the near miss If you're under PSM and you've done a process hazard analysis and you've done your pre-startup safety review and there's a near miss, then that's a serious problem. It is a data point, but it's something that has to be addressed right away. It touches on everything that we've said, the employee engagement with the management, the leadership. So I couldn't agree more that near misses need to be investigated. And they're probably easier to investigate than if an actual incident had occurred. An incident did occur, a near miss, but no one got injured. So learn from it.
All right, we'll go ahead and keep that questions box open. We do have a few minutes left in the session. We'll see if anything else appears in there. But during this little wait, I'll go ahead and tell you about some upcoming webinars that we have. October the 19th, 1 o'clock, we'll have Tosca CBI Essentials for Coding Ingredients in a Post-Lautenberg World. This will be led by Martha Marapice, who is a partner with Wiley Rhine LLP, and Scott Sherlock, who is consulting counsel with Wiley LLP. And then on October the 31st, we will have one of our state affairs updates. And if you haven't had a chance to join one of these, this is where our lobbyists from, in this case, it'll be the states of Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, and Maryland. Our lobbyists in those states come on and present. And there's a Q&A at the end for you. And just want to note also that you don't have to reside in or work in any of those states. You can be located anywhere in the country, and you can go ahead and register for that on paint.org, the same as you register for sort of the standard series webinar. Slides from the presentation today will be distributed this afternoon. We'll send you a PDF, and the recording will be on paint.org very soon. And with that, I'm checking back on the questions box. We don't have anything in there right now. I want to thank Bob and Carl and Pete for presenting this series and taking the time over the past, I'm trying to figure out how many months it's been that you guys have when we started this series. But thanks, thanks so much for spending this time with our members. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for giving us the platform to do this.
Thank you, Marcus, and thanks, everyone.
Yep,
Glad to
absolutely.
be a part of it.
We appreciate everyone watching. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. And with that, we will close out, and we look forward to seeing everyone on an upcoming member webinar. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.